History has not recorded much about this Egyptian tribe that still exists today. Back in the era of ancient Egypt, before Africa was divided into individual nations, people knew their worth, their history, and their identity. A wealthy warrior king, Pharaoh, who had an inherent skepticism for strangers, ruled them. In all his speeches, he would tell his people to accept strangers, but not to trust them. Unfortunately, this great king met an unexpected end in a sudden attack on the palace by the British one early morning. Taken off guard, the king, who was ill, couldn't keep up the fight. In the process, he was killed by an arrow intended for his warrior daughter. The son cried as he witnessed it, blaming the sister for their father's death. The day before the attack, the daughter had arrested a British man for interrogation against her father's orders to release him. She turned a deaf ear and sought more details from the man, which prompted the British to attack. The British, the enemies of this great kingdom, came like hunters to kidnap the people of the kingdom for the slave trade. The feud with the British began when they attempted to colonize the kingdom, a proposition that the great king refused. The late king had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. The first child, a daughter, was his favorite. She was the warrior leader, wise, strong, fought like a beast, and held many of her father's secrets. Her name was a significant threat to their enemies, and even the neighboring kingdoms feared her. Days after the king was buried, the son took over. With the hatred and jealousy he harbored for his sister, he wanted her to be submissive to him and disregarded her advice. This made the British see him as an easy target and an opportunity. The warrior princess, with her soldiers, set off to ambush an enemy ship carrying new ammunition. Things didn't go as planned. The enemy was prepared as if they were expecting her presence. She was captured in the fight after losing numerous warriors. In her absence, the new king, her brother, allowed himself to be deceived by the British. Despite warnings from his second sister, he made unhealthy decisions and was manipulated to perceive his sister as the enemy. The second daughter, the father's second child, led some warriors to rescue her sister. Despite their enemies having more advanced weapons, they managed to escape with hundreds of villagers. The warrior sister wanted to return to the palace, but was informed about the palace's current situation by her sister. The warrior sister was disappointed in her brother for allowing the enemy to get too close, something their father had always warned about. In a far distance from the kingdom, the sisters resided with the other villagers who had escaped with them. They refused to leave their warrior leader, the princess, promising to stay with her. The warrior sister felt a responsibility to keep them safe. She watched from a distance as their enemies took over her father's land and vowed to bring the British down. She planned an attack on the British weapon base, intending to steal some weapons for the fight. Her younger sister warned her it was a suicide mission, but her mind was already made up. She set out for the mission, leaving her sister to watch over the people with a few remaining warriors. They sneaked into the weapon base, but it wasn't long before their cover was blown. A fierce battle ensued. The warrior princess, with her remaining soldiers, put up a valiant fight, but the British were too well equipped, their weapons more advanced. One by one, her soldiers fell, their cries echoing in the night. The princess herself was gravely wounded, an enemy bullet piercing her side, but she fought on, driven by a desperate need to protect her people and reclaim her father's kingdom. Realizing they were overwhelmingly outnumbered, she called for a retreat. With a heavy heart and burning pain in her side, she managed to escape with the few soldiers who survived. When they arrived back at their makeshift camp, a sight of horror awaited them. Their base had been attacked, their people slaughtered. The princess rushed to her sister's tent, only to find it empty. She felt a cold dread seep into her heart. Her sister was gone. The British had found their base, she realized, and they had come for her. Overwhelmed by grief and guilt, the princess collapsed, the weight of her failures pressing down on her. Her people were dying, her sister was missing, and her kingdom was slipping further into enemy hands with each passing day. But even in her despair, she knew she couldn't give up. She was a leader, a warrior, and the hope of her people. She had to fight, not just for her lost kingdom, but for the memory of her father, for the lives of her people, and for her missing sister. And so the princess, despite her wounds and her heartache, began to plan her next move. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Her numbers were dwindling, her resources limited, but she had something the British didn't have: the burning desire for freedom and the will to protect her people at all costs. As for her sister, her fate remains unknown. Is she dead or alive? If she's alive, how would the princess save her? Would she turn to the British for help, or would she seek assistance from her brother, who had already shown himself to be easily manipulated by the enemy? The fate of this ancient Egyptian tribe hangs in the balance, their future uncertain. But one thing is sure, their warrior princess won't go down without a fight. The question remains, will she succeed in her mission to reclaim her father's kingdom and save her people from the clutches of the British? Only time will tell. Guys, I would love to see you comment on this. Damn, finally this art took me a whole 4 days. Guys, I would love to know, how many of you would like to read this as a novel book with more details that I couldn't mention here? Would you like a novel with this story? Make sure to leave a comment with a yes, because I'm coming up with one. And do not forget to give us a like and follow. Subscribe to my YouTube channel too. See y'all in the comment section, homies.